Another thing I want to point out about media IP, and this, again, this is true not just in social games, but in video games as a whole. We think it can limit your downside as part of a wider portfolio of games. So the green line on this graph is a sort of theoretical risk-reward profile for games based on original IP. So say Angry Birds or Farmville. Now when you get a hit with original IP, it's amazing. You get fantastic revenues, everything's great. But there's so many games fail or certainly don't pass your sort of revenue break-even levels that you would wish. Because it's a tough market, it's a high-risk market. What we find with media IP-based games is that because the brands are recognizable, people will try that game at least once. So your downside is limited to a certain extent. Now, if you look at the leaderboards of video games today or the leaderboards on appdata.com, you won't see a media IP-based game up there in the top 5, but they'll be up there consistently, say, in the top 20 or top 25, and occasionally we'll get up right to the top. And I think that's just an important thing to think about if you're a publisher and you're starting to think about media brands. It's a good way of just mixing that risk-reward in your portfolio. I mean, obviously there's some downsides. You have to pay for media rights, but I think media owners are more flexible these days, and they're willing to look at different business models. So is media IP a sort of guaranteed winner on Facebook? Well, I think all of you agree, probably not. You still have to have the really essential elements of a social game. I mean, this is basic stuff, but you have to have the high quality of game design, good analytics. You need to have frequent opportunities for monetization, and actually this is where a lot of branded games have really fallen down, certainly in the earlier days. You have to have strong file design. Oftentimes that was also completely forgotten in branded games earlier on. You have to have a really good marketing budget. Even though marketing costs are lower, you can't get away with just spending, $10,000 on marketing. And you need a proper translation of the brand. If someone sees a brand slapped onto a game that has no relevance to the brand, I think it just really annoys the user because they were expecting something else. I think all these games here, I mean, obviously I'm going to choose my own, but Family Feud, Price is Right, I think they are good translations of the brand. We've tried to put in a lot of different viral hooks, constantly changing those hooks as Facebook prevents us from doing that. We're quite restricted in the way we monetize. These are episode-based games, but I think we've done the best we can given the type of game that we're making. We have very sophisticated analytics, especially on Price is Right. We've actually built our own proprietary system. And I think the translations brand is very, very accurate. Wheel of Fortune is another excellent game. It's not ours, but I really respect that game. And I think had a slow start, but now it's doing surprisingly well. It's really sustained a good number of MAUs on a regular basis, though I don't know how it's monetizing. I think some weak examples, there's a UK version of a Deal or No Deal game, which is very, very weak game, and I actually believe that game is going to be redeveloped this year for the US market, and I think that could be quite interesting to watch. And what's the other one? Back to the Future. You might not have seen this. There's a Back to the Future branded kind of Bejeweled Blitz type of game. It's not made by Bejeweled, but it's that kind of puzzle game. And it's just this brand that's slapped onto the game, and there's no correlation between Back to the Future and a puzzle game. And at the moment, that game isn't gaining traction. I just think there are better puzzle games, and what you expect from Back to the Future isn't in that game. And so people will lose interest almost instantly.